financial insights, the power of an FP&A tool. We're so glad you can join us today. My name is Nancy Quello. I am in the marketing department at Markham Technology, and I will be your host for today's session. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. Next slide, please. Disclaimer, Markham LLP and Markham Technology LLC have prepared these materials as part of an educational program. The information contained herein is of a general nature and is not intended to address the circumstances of any particular individual, entity, or case. While every effort has been made to offer current and accurate information, errors can occur. Furthermore, laws and regulations referred to in this program may change over time and should be interpreted only in the light of a particular circumstances. The information presented here should not be construed as legal, tax, accounting, or valuation advice. No one should act on such information without appropriate professional advice after a thorough examination of a particular situation. Now, logistics. Thank you. During today's program, you can submit questions to our presenters using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom platform. We do encourage folks to leverage this opportunity because we do want to make this a very interactive presentation, and we're all here for you. And the premise of this webinar is for educational purposes, so feel free to ask any questions. We will get to the questions towards the end of the webinar. And for those who are wondering if they can receive the slides and the recording, yes, we will be providing the slides and the recording post-event. Now, for the CPAs and those who are here for CPE credit, if you would like to receive continuous professional education credits for CPAs for attending today's session, you will need to be active in the platform for a minimum of 50 minutes and answer 3 polling questions. Now we have 4 polling questions in total. All you would have to do is just answer 3 out of the 4. And those polling questions will appear on your screen at random times during the presentation. Each poll will be active for 1 minute. Please be sure to select an answer and submit your responses for tracking purposes. Also, please allow 24 to 48 hours for us to process the CPE credits. Now, without further ado, I'll pass it over to Stacy Brown, our VP at Markham Technology, and also our speaker. Stacy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Stacy Brown, and I'm VP of FP&A Solutions here at Markham Technologies. A little bit about myself as we walk through a lot of information today. I personally have been implementing FP&A tools for the past 10 years. Prior to that, I implemented a mid-market ERP system called Dynamics GP. I was a Microsoft certified trainer and professional in that application. With FP&A, I started off from scratch. I implemented, loaded data, built reports, built planning templates, moved on to being a solution architect, helping organizations like yours configure the FP&A tools, not only to meet their requirements today, but to grow with them. And then finally, prior to joining Markham, I led a team of about 7 people implementing FP&A applications. I'm happy to be here today to really talk about our learning objectives. The first learning objective that we have is to distinguish the difference between an FP&A tool and other finance tools out there in the marketplace. So we're going to go through what the various tools are, what they do, and then I'll give you a pretty cool analogy near the end of that. We'll develop a deeper knowledge of workforce planning. So one of the benefits of an FP&A tool is really how it can help you really dig into workforce planning. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and then I'll show you a demo of a FP&A tool and how it helps with workforce planning. And then lastly, we'll illustrate the benefits of an FP&A tool and how it can help you make informed financial decisions. So who is Markham and who is Markham Technology? Markham Accounting and Advisories is a national CPA firm supporting a vast number of industries, as you can see below. Just to point out a few of those industries, we've got construction, we've got cannabis, we've got healthcare and life sciences. That's a growing market these days, as well as our nonprofit industry. Markham LLP was founded in 1951 and has over 4,000 professionals throughout the United States. We are nationally ranked number 12 for CPA firms. Markham Technologies was founded in 2001 and has been growing rapidly. We have over 260 employees to date, and we rank around number 24 in the VAR 100. As Markham Tech can leverage our intimate relationship within Markham LLP, we have access to a deep bench of financial, business, and operational and industry specialists. When weaved together with our teams, that compounds our ability to deliver successful outcomes and become indispensable partners, right? Our whole job is to be here to support you, whether that's an implementation of a software or answering accounting questions you may have. So what are some service offerings that Markham Technology has? We help our clients effectively converge business and technology. Within Markham Technologies, we have 5 pillars of service, which you can see on the left side of the screen. If we start at the bottom and work our way up, we have cybersecurity and digital forensics. We do disaster recovery, cybersecurity due diligence. We do managed VSOC services. And again, we can be your VCISO. We do managed IT services. Think of us as your remote help desk. We provide IT staff augmentation and business continuity as a service. Our cloud and infrastructure solutions allows us to help you with infrastructure projects. So if you're moving to a new office and need help setting up your IT infrastructure, we can help you there. We do project management, provide services around technology and cloud as well. We have our strategic consulting practice. This practice provides vendor selections, which we'll talk about a little bit later today. We provide overall business assessments. What applications do you have? Are you leveraging them to their fullest capability? How can you improve from a technology standpoint? We also help you create a digital transformation strategy and help you implement that strategy. And then lastly, we have the digital consulting pillar. That's what we're going to focus on today as we talk about accounting and finance software. We implement and support post-implementation several ERP systems, a couple FP&A solutions. We help with data analytics and insights and automation as well. So let's talk about finance automation as a journey. Now, this finance journey that I'm showing you right here is really record to report and everything in between. A few years ago, CFOs were responsible for audits and compliance. Today, they need to work with their team to understand financial information, sales information like pipeline value, and operational data. To bring all the data together, we need tools to make the actual data entry faster, our close process shorter, and our reporting easier. Gone are the days where we can really export and explore and analyze data in Excel. As CEO of Planful, Grant Holleran said last year, we're in the golden age of CFO tech. No longer can we leverage Excel or the back of a napkin really to do that analysis. There's too much data out there for CFOs to consume, and we need technology to help us with that. So let's explore those tools that you can have for you and your team, not only to make the process easier, but also lower the stresses on your team, right? I think our goals today and in the last couple of years has really been to maintain the team that we have especially since I think one economist said earlier a few months ago, I was listening to a presentation and they said there's 3 jobs for every 1 person in the marketplace today. So the first stop on our journey is an ERP system. Everyone has one. Now, through the life of a business, as it grows and changes, the ERP system typically grows and changes too. Now, stops 2, 3, and 4 can change in the order in which they're presented. So, for example, I have closed management as 2, FP&A as 3, and BI as 4, but we can switch those around. Closed management and FP&A typically start for a business in Excel, but ultimately the processes get more complex or the Excel spreadsheets get too big. And really we need to automate the process and put it into an application to ease the burden for our team. And then lastly, we have BI. Sometimes you can start this off in Excel, right? It's a lot of graphical representation, but your organization may already own licenses to a BI tool, depending on what you have. So you may already be leveraging it now. Now, of course, there are other tools out in the ecosystem to help with automating and streamlining data entry into your ERP system, like a bill.com, for example, or a procurement system like RecLogic. But today, we're going to explore the 4 stops to this finance automation and how they can help you. So a little bit of education first. What is an ERP? ERPs can also be called sometimes accounting software. They're a required application in today's finance department. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and it's an application that really runs your entire business while also supporting the Department of Finance. I really break down ERP systems into 2 categories, right? You've got your on-premise applications. These are usually stored on a local service and managed by your IT department. These applications typically require some level of administration, backup continuity, business continuity, and require cost when upgrading. Then you have your cloud-based applications. These applications typically have on a schedule upgrades. So you're never forced to upgrade. You leave on a Friday, you come in on a Monday, and the application is upgraded. But they do come with a SaaS subscription. Now, SaaS stands for subscription as a service. A couple of examples of the 2. So on-premise, think of those as Microsoft Dynamics GP. That's on a local server, or QuickBooks Desktop is an on-premise application. And then a couple examples of a cloud-based application would be Sage Intacct or Acumatica. What is closed management? Closed management software provides a way to streamline your financial close cycle. It acts as the missing link between your ERP and your reconciliation. Typically, these tools include functionality to control task management, auto reconciliations. So for example, if we're reconciling your bank statement to your cash account, and they also identify any adjusting journal entries that need to be created. So if you have intercompany eliminations, one subsidiary is out of balance to another, it'll help identify those adjusting journal entries. What's great about a closed management tool is that it doesn't just help in managing the close process that we have every month and identifying the bottlenecks that can occur, but it also helps lower the amount of time needed for your audit, to prepare for your audit. A lot of these applications allow you to create audit books that you can provide to your auditors. You can provide limited access to your auditors into the closed management tools for them to see the audit trail of the approval workflows, your account reconciliations, and your tasks that were completed each month. What is FP&A? FP&A stands for financial planning and analysis. And it allows you to budget or forecast for your organization while also completing analytical activities that support business decisions and identify the overall health of the organization. These applications typically allow you to consolidate your data. So if you have multiple ERP systems or multiple subsidiaries, they allow you to consolidate the data in one place under a common chart of accounts. They allow you to do your topside journal entries, your intercompany eliminations, your minority interest, for example, within the application. They allow you to report. So not only are you getting the canned income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow that your ERP system provides, but you can really do some budget versus actual analysis. You can build reports that show, departments across the columns, and maybe we're looking at just SG&A expenses. And then lastly, planning. That's a big focus for these tools. That when I say plan, I mean budget or forecast. And all these tools allow you to forecast at the speed and iteration that you need. A couple types of FP&A tools are Planful, Vina, and we also support Martis here at Markham Technology. All of these applications are cloud-based. What is BI? BI stands for Business Intelligence. This tool really gathers data from various sources, such as databases, spreadsheets, CRM tools, so your customer relationship management tool, your HRIS system or payroll system, and really transform it into an understandable format. Typically, what I see is people will export financial data from their FP&A tool into BI with their sales data to be able to create those pretty graphical representations that our executives can really see and understand and digest, right? Not everybody understands financial numbers. Sometimes it can be intimidating to people, and really BI tools really help leverage that knowledge and put it into a graphical representation. Now, in the last 4 slides, I've gone over a lot of information and I've done it pretty quickly. So let's take a moment to really see how do they differ. ERP systems look at historical data. What's already occurred in our business? What expenses have we already incurred? What our balance sheet looked like last month, for example. Close management helps you manage and speed up the month-end close process, right? It's really managing your tasks, identifying where your bottlenecks are, and how you can make it better. FP&A tools at their core are really helping you look to the future. What are your organization's goals? Where do you want to be in 5 years, and how are you going to get there? And then lastly, like I mentioned in the last slide, BI tools kind of put everything into a pretty picture for everyone. Now I'm going to leave you with this analogy because I think it's a great one. I always compare these systems to a car, right? So my analogy is ERP systems are like your odometer in your car. It tells you where you've been, how long you have driven. Closed management is like the diagnostic we get on our car. So it's telling us where the problems are and how we can make our car more efficient. FP&A is like the GPS. It's telling us where we're trying to go and the fastest way to get there. As we're traveling on our route, our GPS on our phone or in our car will reroute us, right? When there's traffic or an accident. And it's trying to get us to our ending point, our destination, as fast as it can. And that's what our FP&A tools are trying to help you do as well. Your FP&A analysis should be doing the same for your business. We're forecasting for the future in a month, 3 months, a year. We're changing our objectives to ultimately meet our company's goals. And then finally, BI tools. They're like the cool images in new cars on the dashboard where they're showing us how fast we're going, how many miles we're getting to the gallon, and how much tire pressure we have in each tire. That leads us to polling question number 1. Out of all the applications we've discussed, which tool does your organization currently use? Does it use just an ERP system? Does it use an ERP system and a close management tool? Do you use ERP and FP&A solutions? Are you using ERP and BI? Are you using all of the above?
While we're waiting for folks to respond to our polling question, we actually received a comment on our chat feature. It says, I'm going to use that metaphor for my exec team. They often confuse all those terms. I actually would have to agree. That is a really great analogy, Stacy.
That's awesome. I will say in my experience, a lot of people confuse BI tools and FP&A tools. BI tools are really more the end picture, where FP&A is really your financial reporting, budget versus actuals. It can store some statistical data, but it's not meant for that end picture that non-finance users can use. All right, so the results are in, and not surprisingly, 27% of the group here is only using an ERP system, right? I think we're getting to the point where people are starting to investigate the other tools out there that can help them and their organization. I am surprised to see the majority of people on this call use all of the tools, which is very exciting. It means you're really creating those efficiencies and hopefully growing your organization because of that. So why FP&A and why FP&A tools? Anyone who has participated in the budgeting process knows that it can be a tedious task, right? The process can easily stretch into a lengthy exercise in which participants battle over strategic items like sales targets, hiring, and compensation. When it gets bad enough, it can devolve into arguments or heated discussions with department heads over budgeted expenses. So that leads us to polling question number 2. How long does your budget process take? 0 months, we don't currently budget, 1 to 3 months, or 3 to 6 months?
So while we're waiting, Stacey, do you want to take a guess on how long it typically takes for folks to do their budget process?
I typically say it takes 3 to 6 months without a financial tool. I want to put that caveat in there, without a financial tool.
Okay, I think you're going to be very surprised with our results then, or surprised in a good way. We're just going to give it a few more seconds while others, people are still filling in their responses, which we greatly appreciate. Giving it 10 more seconds. Right.
Wow, I am shocked. So 63% of you guys said it takes 1 to 3 months. So I would say if it goes to the 3 month, I should have put in here 1 to 2 months and then 3 to 6, because I wonder if that would have changed the results a little bit. I'll have to think about that next time we put that polling question out there. I would say that, if you're doing it in Excel, you're probably more at that 3-month mark, right? When I talk to clients and we talk about before they do their implementation, their timeline of implementation for their budget, and when they start and when they finish. If they're a January to December practice, they typically start in October. They're releasing their budgets to their team members, rolling out Excel files and so forth. And then by December, are getting board approval for their budget, hopefully. All right. So what does FP&A do, right? So if you're not in an FP&A department, maybe your organization is small and your accounting folks are your finance folks. What's the difference between accounting and FP&A is really what I'm trying to explain here. So FP&A Trend Group identifies really 5 pillars to help FP&A manage company value. So these are the 5 pillars that an FP&A department should be doing to provide value to their organization. The first one is understand. We need to understand the business value. An FP&A professional investigates the company's current revenue growth, profit margins, and any other critical factors while considering prospects for managing and enhancing its value, right? So really identifying what has the organization done from a historical standpoint. Why did we have variances in our budget or in our forecast, and then explaining those and understanding those business values. Number 2 is describe. So we need to be able to describe the business by setting metrics and models. In practice, it involves actions to create comprehensive business models based on key internal and external drivers. I will tell you, I have implemented FP&A tools across various industries. I've implemented tools for the same industry at the same time, and their key metrics and drivers are typically slightly different. By connecting these drivers and integrating the 3 core financial statements, your balance sheet, cash flow, and income statement, FP&A professionals can effectively communicate an organization's value. So where are we going? Now, FP&A should really be seen as a business partner. So pillar number 3 is steering decision making. We need to steer decisions managed with supporting data analytics, right? I think this is one thing that FP&A really works hard to do, is let the numbers explain where the business is and where it's going. You don't want to force the numbers into the narrative that your executives want to see. FP&A professionals are critical in helping companies make informed choices, optimize resources, and navigate the ever-changing business landscape. I think, in the last couple of years with the pandemic, I saw organizations who budgeted once a year start reforecasting every month. You can't do that without an FP&A tool, right? You're just asking for human error in that example. The 4th pillar is extract. So extract involves analyzing the data, pinpointing causes and identifying trends, and ultimately telling a compelling story that can help executives with their decision-making process, right? And inform strategic direction for the organization. We talked about telling the story and steering the decision-making, but I found it interesting on CFO.com, they surveyed FP&A analysts and determined that on average, an FP&A team spends 75% of their time gathering data and only 25% providing value-added analysis and telling the story. If that sounds familiar to you, if you're spending more of your time aggregating the Excel sheets, you really seriously should start looking into FP&A tools because that's core functionality for them. They all do it and they make it super simple. And then lastly, number 5, reporting. And when we talk about reporting and communicating to the market, I'm not just saying publicly, if you're publicly traded or reporting to the SEC, I'm talking about reporting to your board, reporting to your management, because all of these reports are typically different, as well as reporting your, budget versus actuals and your financial statements. So what are some benefits of an FP&A tool? One, it does decrease your planning time, right? It decreases the amount of time you have to prepare for your plan. So creating and updating your Excel sheets to be rolled out to each department. The Excel sheet you use to consolidate those spreadsheets decreases that time. It decreases the time that people have to fill it out and for us to see the results. A lot of times you're sending out Excel sheets and then hounding people to get them back. With an FP&A tool, as they're entering their budgets and clicking save, even if they're not done with the process, you can see where it is in the process. It increases workforce planning accuracy. So I'll show you right after the slide a demo of a tool with FP&A. What I see with a lot of organizations who use Excel is they may be managing workforce planning at a named level, but typically they're doing their taxes and benefits at a very high level. So they're doing average percentages for benefits, and for taxes, they're kind of peanut butter spreading it across the months. Labor costs are typically the majority of costs for any organization in this day and age, especially with the labor shortage that we've had in the past couple of years. We're having to pay people more to complete tasks. And what I see is specifically with taxes, when we peanut butter spread it, we're under our expectation, under expecting our liabilities, right? So we're planning less liability costs at the beginning of the year because we're peanut butter spreading it, when actually the majority of our tax cost burden is in the beginning of the year. And then at the end of the year, we're over budgeting our tax costs because a lot of organization and employees taxes are all at the beginning of the year. It lowers aggregation time. So I spoke to this in the last slide. When you're inevitably sending out Excel sheets to folks to fill out and send back, I don't think anybody has the experience where they don't modify the rows, they don't modify the columns, right? Inserting rows where you don't want them to insert them, deleting columns where you don't want them to delete them. And then that just adds to the time of copying and pasting that into our consolidated workbook, right? And making sure we are really including everything within our budget. With the amount of time we save on aggregation, it increases our time for analysis, right? So going back to that CFO diagram or CFO.com survey, right now it's 75% gathering data, 25% analysis. With an FP&A tool, we want to swap that, right? Swap it. I can't speak today. And so you want to make sure that 25% of your time is spent aggregating the data and validating that the data is correct. And then 75% really analyzing the data, giving suggestions, doing that scenario planning, what if analysis. Obviously, with an FP&A tool, we're decreasing human error in the budgeting and forecasting process, eliminating the need for that aggregation, like I mentioned before. Or minimizing the amount of templates that we need to manage within an application. Typically, right now, we send out an Excel sheet. It may look different per group, or it's the same Excel sheet, but when we get it back, it looks a little different. FP&A tools provide the ability to structure the template of what you want people to fill out, but also give them the flexibility to add comments and explain how they got you to the number that they're budgeting for. It increases reporting capabilities. So everybody says, well, we have reporting in our ERP systems. From an actual standpoint, I think ERP systems do a great job of an income statement, a balance sheet, and a cash flow. FP&A tools really enhance the reporting capabilities. They allow you to slice and dice the data. They allow you to quickly change the format of a report. As a CFO or an FP&A manager, when you go into a meeting and your CEO goes, well, sales look great, but as a total number for year to date, but how is each product doing? If I don't already have that report in my package, I'm typically probably saying, hey, let me go back to my desk. I'll have it to you in a couple days. With FP&A tools, we don't need to do that. We can quickly slice and dice the data and say, okay, here's sales by product, for example. Then we have, it allows departments and division leaders to take ownership. Right now, we see a lot of maybe department heads sending in their budgets, but then they're not held accountable to their actuals versus budget, right? Unless somebody is holding their feet to the fire. With FP&A tools, we can give them ownership of their budget. We can give them access to the reports to only see their department or their division. So no longer are they relying on the FP&A team to send out those reports, but they can go in and analyze the data and really help out the FP&A department in that aspect. And then lastly, you know, any tool really needs to elevate the CFO, really make him a business partner in the process so that, you know, we see in today's age, a CFO isn't just talking about historical data anymore and is our audit checked off on. They're really there to analyze, speak to the decisions that the business needs to be make and be part of that conversation. So I want to take a moment to show you what an FP&A tool can look like. So I'm showing you Planful today. Any tool in the marketplace can provide the same functionality from a workforce planning standpoint. We just want to give you an idea of what it could look like. When it comes to these tools, and we'll get to this in just a little bit, what we typically see is that they all provide the same functionality. It's just what user interface that you and your organization feel comfortable with. So here I'm showing you workforce planning in the Planful application. 90% of our workforce planning is completed with existing employees. So with these tools, it allows you to import data from your HRIS roster or your payroll system into the application, and then the application is automatically calculating your compensation items. So that's what I have here. I'm going to add a new employee just to show you how easy it is, and I am going to copy Mark Gifford, for example, here. So I'm going to click on Mark. I'm going to click on the copy button here. And we're going to hire a new sales position called the East Sales Director. So when I open up my employee here, I can give it a name. So I'm going to call him a to be hire 0001. I'm going to have his hire date in the middle of June. So we're in 2023. I'm going to change his position description to East Sales Director. What I like about these tools too is you no longer have to do all of this outside of the department conversations, right, with the HR representative. It can be a collaborative approach. You can have your department leads come in and say, these are the new hires that I want to create. And then the HR directors and the finance team can get together to determine salaries and so forth. Up here in the employee type, this is really in Planful what dictates your compensation items. So for example, if I click on Canadian full-time here, now mind you, these are all customizable to you. These are not out of the box. So you create these employee types. You can see things within Canadian pension plan, employment insurance, so forth. If I change that employee now to still be in the US, I can go to my US full-time. And when I go back to my compensation items, I see things like 401k match, federal unemployment, so forth. And then lastly, I just need to validate their annual salary here. So I have $180,000. Now on the compensation tab, again, these are all the compensation items specific to this user. Down here, I can identify what work state they live in. So really getting granular on what my state unemployment taxes are. I can really get granular with my health insurance packages, so I can determine cost to the employer by which insurance package they're selecting. And then, of course, the process that makes everything easier is allocating employees, whether we're allocating cost across projects in a time frame, right? So a from period to a start period, or just allocating them to different departments. What I like about these tools with the allocations are they're typically really smart, and they're not going to allow you to over allocate an employee, right? We get a nice little message here saying that the employee has to equal 100% from an allocation standpoint, right? So when I click save here, this employee is now created. I've updated my financial statements, my OPEX templates with the personnel costs associated to this employee. If I click on reports here, I can see what compensation items I have for that employee and what the costs are associated to those comp items. So you can see here, I always like to point out federal unemployment tax. This individual's unemployment tax is all done in the month of June because that's when they were hired. And we don't experience that cost again until the beginning of the year. Now, with your salaries, these applications are smart enough not to just peanut butter spread their costs. So I see a lot of individuals that say, well, if they say they're going to hire somebody, they're going to hire them on the first of the month. But there are cases, especially when we're forecasting and reforecasting, that we actually know when the new employee is going to start, and we should probably put in their start date to make our workforce planning more accurate. The natural view in this example just shows you the GL accounts. So all of my unemployment taxes, Social Security, Medicare are all going into this 61,000 account, for example, for my payroll taxes. And then this GL account view I love because it actually shows me I'm allocating between the two departments here. So that's a little bit of a flavor of what workforce planning can do and how it can improve the process when you're moving from an FP&A tool from Excel to an FP&A tool, excuse me. So what are a couple of things you should consider when selecting an FP&A tool? And I think this leads us to our third polling question. Where are you on your FP&A journey? Have you not yet started, so you have no budgeting process? You're doing everything in Excel, completing your budgets or forecasts, or are you leveraging a solution to automate FP&A? So my guess is, based on the polling question number 2 that we had, that we're going to have high number of people already leveraging a solution.
I'll let the suspense kill you. And we're just going to give it a 30 more seconds for folks to provide their input. But maybe you're right, or maybe you're wrong, Stacey. I'm not sure.
Taking an educated guess here, Nancy.
So I think you're going to be surprised again with the results.
Oh, my educated guess was wrong. Okay, so 52% of you guys are saying you do everything in Excel. That's not a bad thing, but my guess is you're here because your Excel files are getting too big and they're getting hard to manage. And that's one of the major reasons people move from Excel to an FP&A solution. So what should you consider when beginning your FP&A journey? Now, I haven't put all the questions out here, but here's a few to get you start thinking. Is your process centralized or decentralized? What I mean by that is the FP&A team or your finance and accounting team doing the budget for your organization? They're really controlling the numbers. Or is it decentralized? You're sending out Excel spreadsheets to all your department and division leaders, and they're sending them back, and you're aggregating them. So decentralized is you're sending them out. Centralized means it's staying within the finance team. If it's decentralized, how many users are actually accessing the application, right? Is it 4 additional people, 20 additional people, right? You need to take this into consideration when you're selecting an FP&A tool. When you go through the process, I always say you should probably select an advocate that is outside the FP&A team or finance team or accounting team that can really be your advocate for the change within your organization. Of the users that are going to be in the system, are they comfortable with Excel and are they comfortable with financial data? Are they having to own their budget versus actuals today? And why I say that is when you're implementing any software, you want to understand the end users who will be using it, the processes that are going to be changing, and how that's going to relieve stress or add stress to the end user. People that are not financial, don't understand financial data may have a little bit higher stress level. And as you're implementing these tools, you want to create a training process that decreases that stress. With these budgeting process, if it's decentralized, do you need complex workflow approval process, right? There are some applications out there on the market that are way better at workflow than others. And so you really want to identify what your key requirements are and prioritize all of your requirements. The second to last question, I would say, or second, probably third to last question, I would say, would be what type of budgeting do you need to complete? What I mean by that, are you budgeting? Are you just doing your annual plan? Are you budgeting and forecasting? How often are you reforecasting your data? Are you only budgeting your income statement? Or if you're a nonprofit, your statement of activities, right? Or are you really budgeting and forecasting your full 3 financial statements, right? Your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow. This second to last question I would typically ask is, do you need the ability to budget in multiple currencies? Not all FP&A tools out there can easily allow you to budget in multiple currencies. So if that's a requirement for you, I would make that a top priority. And then lastly, how many ERP systems are you going to have flowing actual data into the FP&A tool? So are you going to have to consolidate multiple ERP systems into a common chart of accounts in the application, or are we just working with one ERP system? I think that will just really drive your decision making as well. With FP&A solutions, I do think there's 3 types of FP&A solutions. If we look at the bubble on our left, that's your structured FP&A tools. There's heavy IT involvement in these tools. Typically, you need to know a special language to manage these tools. They are very flexible. If you can dream it, they can do it, but that comes with a high cost. On the right side, you have your do-it-yourself. These tools typically lack financial intelligence. They can be difficult to maintain. And what I mean by that is if your organization goes through a restructure, your organization grows rapidly, the do-it-yourself tools may not be able to handle that change. And then lastly, there may be hidden macros or calculations that you can't see. You just have to trust that they're working correctly. Of course, you always want to be in the middle of any 2 categories. And so the best of both worlds, you want to be able to control what people are doing and providing structure, but also giving them flexibility. The tools in the center typically do grow with your organization as your organization grows. They allow you not only to integrate ERP data like your do-it-yourself applications, but they also let you import CRM data, so customer relationship management applications like Salesforce. It allows you to integrate your HRIS payroll like ADP or Paylocity, for example, and they also provide that workflow management that you want to see. Now within 3 types, I break it down into 3 cost levels, right? Because a lot of, when we're going in to select an application, cost is something that we need to take into consideration. And sometimes that's more of a high priority requirement is meeting the budget for these applications. So your low entry costs typically fall in that do-it-yourself bubble. They're little to no flexibility. They typically have minimal reporting capabilities. They'll give you like a BVA and that's it. They are typically administered by the finance team. So little to zero IT involvement there in the low entry cost. If we skip over middle entry for a minute, you've got high entry cost. Those are really those high flexible tools. So more of that structured planning, you dream it, you can do it. They typically require a full-time FTE to administer, and their implementation time is typically a lot longer, so over a year. And then you have your middle entry costs. These really are the ones that are in the center of that bubble that provides flexibility with guardrails, typically allow you to create custom reports. So you're able to slice and dice the data and see it in different ways. And it's typically owned by the Department of Finance. I will tell you 2 of the tools that we use, Planful and Vena here at Markham. We support both of those tools. Both of them leverage Excel syntax. And so you don't need to understand a new coding or new language to maintain those applications. So to give you a few examples, I already gave you examples of the middle entry costs. That's Planful of Vena again. Low entry cost applications, that's going to be your MARTIS. We also here at Markham support that tool as a low entry cost application. SIBP, which stands for Sage Intacct Budgeting Planning. You can only use that tool if you're a Sage Intacct customer. And then lastly, Cube. And then the high entry costs. What I typically see here with these high entry costs is they're going to be higher mid-market enterprise level applications. So their costs are really high, but they're OneStream, Hyperion, and Anaplan in those examples. All right, so one of the things that I look at as a consultant and somebody who advises a lot of people on their vendor selection process is the Nucleus Research Grid. And it's a reliable source that companies can use to review and identify viable FP&A tools. There are other tools out there. A lot of people are familiar with Gartner. There's also G2 Crowd. If you haven't heard of that, it is completely based on user experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Any of the grids within these research organizations really break down the data into 4 quadrants. You almost always want the tools to use to be at the top right corner quadrant. That's in this example, that leader quadrant. To break down the quadrants to kind of give you an example of why Nucleus Research put in the different applications into each quadrant. The ones in the top left corner are your facilitator quadrant. They're usually niche focused. So example would be Sage Intacct Budgeting Planning. I mentioned that in the last slide. That's in that facilitator module because it only can work if you have Sage Intacct. In the bottom left corner, you have the core quadrant. These are low price point applications. They're faster to implement, less expensive to implement. The one that I see the most in the core provider section is that Cintage. In the expert quadrant, so the bottom right quadrant, this is where you're going to see your enterprise level applications. So I mentioned OneStream earlier. That's barely in the leadership quadrant, but it should probably be in the expert quadrant. Your Anaplans, your Hyperions are in that. Typically their pricing is a lot higher. And again, they require an FTE to support and a developer to implement. And then lastly, the leadership quadrant, which you can see here, we have the 2 that we support here at Markham Technologies. The applications in these this leadership quadrant really balance usability and functionality. They're likely to deliver best ROI, so return on investment, and are continuously providing new flexibility or functionality within the tools. For example, I know with Planful, they release upgrades every month with new functionality within their tool. Others within in the leadership quadrant typically do it on a quarterly basis. So how can Markham help you? First off, we can help you with the vendor selection process. It can be overwhelming at times. We typically work with you to identify your requirements, what you like about your current process, what you don't like about your current process. We narrow the field for you on what tools would probably best suit you as an organization. And then we help in the analysis part. So we'll set up the demos, we'll help you analyze results. So we actually send out requests for people to fill out a survey after each demo and really give you guys the knowledge and information you need to pick the tool that best fits your organization. And then, of course, if you do select a tool that we support, we can implement and support those applications moving forward. One last tip that I want to leave you with is when you're implementing a low cost entry point or mid cost entry point application, these are not like ERP implementations. They will not take you a year to implement. Typically, for those low cost entry, it's a couple weeks to a couple months. With your middle cost entry, you're looking at 3 to 6 months of implementation. So that leads us to polling question number 4. Are you interested in an FP&A application? Yes, I'm ready. I'm looking into it right now. Yes, but I have to plan for it in next year's budget. Or no, we're not ready yet.
So Stacy, while we let folks submit over their input for the last polling question, would it be okay if we jump in on some questions? We received some really great ones during your presentation. Okay, so first question is, what are some FP&A best practices for middle market companies, say 50 to 250 million revenue, in terms of planning and forecasting?
So typically I see mid-market organizations, they typically forecast on a quarterly basis. I know it during COVID, they probably forecast a little bit more than that, but that's what I typically see. In these FP&A tools, it allows you to create quickly scenarios. I know there's been a lot of companies in the past couple of months who have had to lay people off, unfortunately, and they help you do that what if analysis with workforce planning.
Great. Now, another question we also received, how does an FP&A tool do both the organizational fiscal year budget and grant budgets, which have periods different from the fiscal year? The same person also had submitted and gave some context. They are heavily grant funded. The grant budget periods are different from the organizational fiscal year.
Yep. So a lot of these applications, you can build templates that give you start and end dates. So we implement these tools for nonprofits all the time. And typically what we do is we actually budget more than 1 year. And so for grants, they typically last at least 3. And so we'll have start and end dates, and then we can budget the grants. I've seen organizations do roll forward. So if they in year 1 don't use all of their money and expect to, they have a little bit extra for year 2, they'll actually roll forward the balances in their templates as well. I don't know if that answers his question.
I believe so. We did receive 2 other questions, but I know we're at our time. Should we answer those 2 questions?
We can answer these 2 questions, yeah.
Yeah, so first one is there a tool to help with channeling the narrative or quote unquote story behind the numbers, end quote, back with FP&A?
So I would say FP&A tools really achieve collaboration within their tools. They want people to comment. They want people to explain their variances. I think that helps develop the story. Within the reports themselves, you can actually print out those comments and that commentary as well. What I also like about these FP&A tools is the comment doesn't disappear. right? When you're doing things in Excel, you're having to create the story and create the explanations in Outlook, Instant Messenger, right? Slack or Teams. And so then you're trying to find it next month because you still got the variance. And in these tools, what it allows you to do is it allows you to record those comments in one place, and then you can report on all those comments throughout the year.
Great. And then last but not least, what is the biggest differentiator in your opinion between Vena and Planfold?
Good question. I would say the number one takeaway, I do think that there are big differentiators for both products, but my biggest takeaway is Vena is leverages Excel. So you have to have Excel to use it. It doesn't work with Google Sheets, but it also allows you to do all of the Excel formulas, and everything you can do in Excel, you can do in the Vena application. Within Planful, Planful is a true cloud-based application. You access it through a web browser. You can complete all your tests in the web. And it also leverage Excel syntax. So you don't have to learn a new language for it. But it is more productized, I would call productized in that example.
Great. That concludes all of our questions. Appreciate that everybody submitted over questions. And then Stacey, I know you're trying to wrap things up.
Yeah, so key takeaways, just to kind of go over what we covered today. We distinguished the differences between an FP&A tool and other finance tools. Remember that great analogy I gave you earlier in the presentation about a car. Develop a deeper knowledge of workforce planning and how an FP&A tool can help you with your workforce planning. And then lastly, we illustrated the benefits of an FP&A tool and how it can help you make informed financial decisions. I want to thank everybody for coming real quickly. Just some upcoming events that we're having. I'll be doing another webinar on August 1st called Forecasting with Confidence, Best Practices for Accurate Financial Planning. And then the second webinar will be in November, Unlocking the Power of FP&A Tools, Why It's Time to Move Beyond Excel. Again, my name's Stacey Brown. My contact information is in this presentation. So if you have any questions post-implementation, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation with every one of you. And again, thank you for attending our webinar.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And just want to remind folks to please allow 24 to 48 hours to receive your CPE credits. And then in addition to that, please expect to receive an email from us with the recording as well as the presentation slides. And last but not least, thank you, Stacey, for putting all this information together. Definitely think it was very, very interesting, and our audience certainly had a lot of great questions. So thank you for all your help.
Thanks, guys, for attending. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. All right. Take care, guys. Alrighty, bye.